late husband's mistress insists there's hidden money somewhere. She hasn't seen what I found in his filing cabinet. I should have known something was off when I saw those white lilies at my husband's funeral. He was allergic to lilies, but there they were, in an expensive arrangement set apart from all the other flowers with a little card that said, "You were everything, A," in loopy handwriting. I pocketed the card and honestly didn't think much about it because I had bigger things on my mind, like the fact that my divorce lawyer Carla had just texted me the best news I'd heard in years. Warren never filed our divorce papers before his car accident, which meant I was still legally his wife and sole beneficiary of his $100,000 life insurance policy. After 3 years of him controlling every penny I spent, making me ask permission to buy groceries and screaming at me for buying name brand cereal, I was finally going to get something out of this nightmare. He'd isolated me from my friends, saying they were bad influences and made me quit my book club because he didn't like me out of the house without him. The man who told me I was too stupid to manage money and kept my teacher salary in an account only he could access was gone, and his insurance was finally going to give me the freedom he never did. The next morning I was packing up his stuff, including the credit card statements he used to hide from me, when this exhausted-looking woman showed up at my door at 7 a.m., holding a toddler with Warren's unmistakable green eyes. She introduced herself as Amanda and said Warren was supposed to set up a trust fund for their son Aiden. I kept my cool, even though inside I was thinking about all those Wednesday nights he said he was working late while I ate dinner alone. I told her that wasn't my problem and suggested she contact his mother Margaret. She got angry and accused me of lying about the insurance amount, claiming it was really $1 million. I shut the door in her face and immediately called Carla to ask if this woman could actually contest my claim. Carla said if she proved paternity and Warren's intent to provide support, then yes, things could get complicated and expensive. That's when I felt my first real wave of panic since Warren died. Margaret showed up 2 days later with a photo album trying to guilt trip me with pictures of Warren playing with the toddler at what looked like a birthday party. I didn't even know this child existed, but apparently his family did. She went on this whole dramatic speech about how I never gave her grandchildren because I was too focused on my career, and how could I keep money from a baby. She said she already lost her son, don't let her lose her only grandson too. I handed the photos back and told her Warren's choices weren't my responsibility, and if he wanted to provide for his kid, he should have divorced me first, or at the very least written down his intentions for the kid. She called me heartless on her way out, which was honestly fair, but I didn't care. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in family court, while Amanda's lawyer presents emails and texts where Warren promised to take care of them when the divorce goes through. Amanda keeps insisting I was hiding money. The judge ordered DNA testing and full financial disclosure. The next day, Carla called sounding like she might have a heart attack because a woman had filed a claim saying she had Warren's 9-year-old daughter with a notarized support agreement. I wanted to scream into the void because how many effing kids did this man have scattered around town? That evening, Margaret showed up at my house completely unhinged, screaming that I knew about the other grandchild and kept it from her for 9 years. She wedged her foot in my door when I tried to close it and hissed that she would help both women make sure her grandchildren got every penny. Carla said that legally, I was in the right and would receive everything. However, she warned me that more children could come forward, and the insurance company was starting a fraud investigation because of the extra claims. Meanwhile, Amanda's lawyer subpoenaed everything, trying to prove the policy was worth more. I spent hours at my kitchen table with a calculator realizing the house had a mortgage Warren never mentioned, and both cars were leased. I'd wasted 3 years of my life in a loveless marriage because I thought I had to be the perfect wife. Then Carla told me that one of the other lawyers found some funds Warren had hid away, but it seemed like no one was allowed to access them. I couldn't help but think about what other secrets Warren had been hiding that were about to blow up my life. The next morning I woke up to find Margaret's car parked outside my house. She wasn't in it, but I knew she was watching from somewhere. I closed all my curtains and tried to go about my day. Around noon I heard rustling in my backyard. I looked out the window and saw Margaret digging through my trash bags. I banged on the window and she scurried away like a raccoon. I called Carla, who told me to document everything with photos and videos. I spent the rest of the day installing a cheap security camera I bought at the hardware store. That night I couldn't sleep. Every little noise made me jump. Around 3 a.m. I heard my doorbell ring over and over. I checked the camera feed on my phone and saw Margaret standing there pressing the button repeatedly. I didn't answer, and eventually she left. The next day I found a note under my windshield wiper. It said I was stealing from innocent children and karma would get me. I recognized Margaret's handwriting from all the passive-aggressive birthday cards she used to send. I took a photo of the note and added it to my growing file of harassment evidence. Carla suggested I get a restraining order but warned it might make Margaret more desperate. I decided to wait and see what happened next. 2 days later, Amanda showed up again, this time without the kid. She looked even more tired than before. She asked if we could talk like adults. I let her stand on my porch while I stayed inside with the door cracked. She told me Warren had been paying her rent for 2 years. Now she was getting evicted. She begged me to help, just until she found a job. I told her I was sorry, but Warren's promises weren't my responsibility. She started crying and said I didn't understand what it was like being a single mom. I said she was right. I didn't, because my husband never told me he had kids. She left after calling me a few choice names I won't repeat. That afternoon, I got a call from the insurance company. They wanted to meet in person to discuss the multiple claims. I panicked and called Carla, who said this was standard procedure. She offered to come with me to the meeting. We met at their office downtown the next morning. The insurance agent was this older guy named Roy, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He spread out a bunch of papers and started asking questions about Warren's death. Did I know about his other relationships? Had he mentioned changing beneficiaries? Was I aware of any other policies? I answered honestly that I knew nothing. Roy seemed satisfied, but said the investigation would continue. As we left, Carla warned me things might get uglier before they got better. She was right. The next week, Margaret started showing up everywhere I went. At the grocery store, at the gas station, even outside the school where I taught. She never approached me, just watched from a distance. My coworkers started asking if I was okay. I told them I was dealing with family drama and left it at that. Then one day I came home to find my front door slightly open. I knew I'd locked it that morning. I called 911 and waited in my car until the police arrived. They searched the house, but nothing was missing. The officer said the lock looked tampered with and suggested I change it. I called a locksmith that afternoon and had new deadbolts installed. I also bought a baseball bat and kept it by my bed. The stress was getting to me. I wasn't sleeping or eating properly. I'd lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. My principal pulled me aside and gently suggested I take some personal days. I agreed and spent the next few days at my friend Lisa's house. She was one of the few people Warren hadn't managed to drive away. She let me cry and vent without judgment. On my second night there, Lisa's doorbell rang at midnight. We looked through the peephole and saw Margaret standing there. Lisa told her to leave or she'd call the cops. Margaret shouted through the door that I couldn't hide forever. Lisa actually did call the police and Margaret was gone before they arrived. I knew I couldn't keep dragging Lisa into this mess. I went home the next morning, exhausted but determined to deal with this head on. There was another note on my door, this time from Amanda. She wanted to meet at a coffee shop to discuss a compromise. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met that afternoon at a busy Starbucks. Amanda looked calmer than before. She said she'd been thinking and realized we were both victims of Warren's lies. She proposed splitting the insurance money 3 ways between me, her, and the other woman with the 9-year-old. I almost laughed. I told her that wasn't how insurance worked. The policy named me as the sole beneficiary. End of story. She said I was being selfish and that Warren would have wanted his kids taken care of. I reminded her that Warren had 3 years to change his policy if that's what he wanted. The conversation went nowhere and we parted on bad terms. That night I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. I double-checked all my locks and windows before bed. Around 2 a.m. I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. I grabbed the baseball bat and crept toward the sound. It came from the kitchen. I peeked around the corner and saw a brick on my floor surrounded by broken glass. There was a note tied to it. My hands shook as I untied it. The message said, "You have 48 hours to do the right thing." No signature, but I knew it was from Margaret. I called the police again. The same officer from before showed up looking annoyed. He took photos and bagged the brick as evidence. He asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. He said they'd need to prove who threw it first. I showed him all my documentation about Margaret's harassment. He said it would help, but wasn't proof she threw the brick. After he left, I swept up the glass and duct taped cardboard over the window. I couldn't go back to sleep. I sat at my kitchen table drinking coffee and thinking about my options. At 7 a.m., Carla called. She'd heard about the brick from the police report. report. She said it was time to get serious about a restraining order. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. The judge granted a temporary order based on my evidence. Margaret would be served within 24 hours. I felt a small sense of relief. Maybe now she'd back off. I was wrong. That evening, Amanda posted on Facebook about how I was keeping food out of her baby's mouth. She didn't use my name, but anyone who knew the situation would understand. Several of Warren's relatives commented calling me heartless and greedy. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Carla. She said to stay off social media and not engage. Easy for her to say. The next morning, I had 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. My voicemail was full of messages from Warren's cousins and family friends telling me to do the right thing. One particularly nasty message from Warren's Aunt Rose said I'd get what was coming to me. I changed my voicemail greeting to say I wasn't accepting calls and to contact my lawyer. Then I blocked every number I didn't recognize. I thought about changing my number entirely, but Carla said I needed to keep documenting the harassment. That afternoon, I was grading papers when my doorbell rang. I checked the camera and saw process server. I opened the door and he handed me papers. Amanda was suing me for emotional distress and claiming I was hiding assets. I called Carla immediately. She said this was a nuisance suit meant to pressure me. She'd handle it, but it would cost money I didn't have yet. I was starting to understand why people gave in to this kind of pressure. The legal fees were adding up fast. That night, I went through Warren's papers again looking for anything about these hidden funds Carla mentioned. I found bank statements for an account I didn't recognize. The balance was substantial, over $200,000, but the account was in some kind of trust. I couldn't make sense of the legal language. I scanned everything and sent it to Carla. She called me back within an hour sounding excited. She said she needed to research more, but this could change everything. I asked what she meant, but she said she didn't want to get my hopes up yet. The next day was Saturday. I tried to have a normal morning, drinking coffee and reading a book. Then I heard a commotion outside. I looked out the window and saw Margaret arguing with a police officer. He was serving her with the restraining order. She was screaming that I was a liar and a thief. Several neighbors came out to watch. I was mortified. After they left, I got a text from my next door neighbor asking if I was okay. I said I was fine and apologized for the drama. She said not to worry about it. Everyone knew Margaret was crazy. That made me feel slightly better. Sunday passed without incident. I actually started to relax a little. Maybe the restraining order would work. Monday morning, I went back to work. My students were happy to see me, and for a few hours, I forgot about the mess my life had become. Then during lunch, the principal's secretary found me. She said there was an urgent call from my lawyer. I took it in the empty teacher's lounge. Carla sounded breathless. She said she'd figured out what the trust was. Warren had set it up for Margaret 5 years ago. She was supposed to be the beneficiary when she turned 65. But here's the kicker. Warren never filed the paperwork to actually name her as beneficiary. The trust defaulted to his spouse, me. I sat down hard. I asked Carla to repeat that. She said I legally controlled Margaret's retirement fund, all $200,000 of it. I asked if Margaret knew. Carla said probably not, or she would have been even more aggressive. She advised me not to tell anyone until we figured out our strategy. I went through the rest of the day in a daze. When I got home, there was a van parked outside. 2 women got out. Amanda and another woman I didn't recognize. With them were 2 kids, the toddler and a girl around 9. Before I could react, they'd surrounded my car. Amanda said they just wanted to talk. The other woman, who introduced herself as Laura, said her daughter deserved to know where her daddy was buried. The 9-year-old was crying. I felt like the worst person in the world, but I knew this was manipulation. I told them to move or I'd call the police. Laura said I was heartless. Amanda said karma would get me. I rolled up my window and laid on the horn until they moved. I pulled into my garage and went inside through the internal door. My hands were shaking. They'd brought the kids to guilt trip me. That was a new low. I called Carla and told her what happened. She said to document it like everything else. Then she said we needed to meet in person to discuss the trust. We met at her office the next morning. She'd done more research and confirmed I had full control of the trust. She said this gave us incredible leverage. If Margaret wanted her retirement money, she'd have to play nice. I asked if I could just keep it. Carla said technically yes, but it would make me look bad in court. Better to use it as a bargaining chip. We spent the next hour strategizing. The plan was simple. I'd offer Margaret a deal. She gets her trust money if she stops supporting Amanda and Laura's claims and signs an agreement to never contact me again. Carla would draw up the paperwork. I went home feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. Maybe I could end this nightmare. That afternoon, UPS delivered a package I hadn't ordered. Inside was a dead rat and a note that said, "Rats get what they deserve." I dry heaved into my kitchen sink. This was escalating beyond harassment. I called the police again. A different officer came this time, a woman named Officer Dana. She took it more seriously than the others. She said the rat could be considered a threat. She'd add it to my file and increase patrols by my house. After she left, I installed more security cameras. I covered every angle of my property. I also started carrying pepper spray. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Around 4 a.m., I heard something at my back door. I checked the camera and saw someone in dark clothes trying to pick the lock. I called 911 and grabbed my bat. The person must have heard sirens because they ran before the police arrived. The officers checked the area but found nothing. They said to call if anything else happened. I spent the rest of the night sitting in my living room with all the lights on. The next day, Carla called Margaret's lawyer to propose our deal. He said he'd discuss it with his client and get back to us. 2 hours later, he called back. Margaret wanted to meet in person to discuss terms. Carla advised against it, but I was desperate to end this. We agreed to meet at Carla's office with both lawyers present. Margaret showed up looking haggard. She'd aged years in the past few weeks. She sat across from me, refusing to make eye contact. Her lawyer explained she was willing to stop supporting the other claims, but wanted her full trust amount. Carla countered that she'd get 90%. The other 10% would cover my legal fees. Margaret's lawyer whispered with her, then agreed. But Margaret had one condition. She wanted to say her piece first. I looked at Carla, who shrugged. Margaret launched into a speech about how I'd ruined her son's life, how I'd trapped him in marriage and driven him to find comfort elsewhere, how his death was probably my fault somehow. I bit my tongue until she finished. Then I said my piece. I told her Warren was an abuser who controlled every aspect of my life, that he'd hidden money, children, and who knows what else, that he'd created this mess, not me. Margaret actually looked surprised. She said Warren told her I was cold and refused to give him children. I said Warren told me she thought I wasn't good enough for him. We stared at each other, realizing we'd both been lied to. Her lawyer cleared his throat and said we should focus on the agreement. We spent the next hour hammering out details. Margaret would get her money in exchange for dropping all support of other claims and never contacting me again. She also had to post a retraction of Amanda's Facebook post saying she'd been mistaken about the situation. Margaret agreed to everything. We signed the papers and I thought it was over. I was wrong again. 2 days later, Amanda showed up at my work. She cornered me in the parking lot after school. She was furious about Margaret's Facebook post. She said I'd bought Margaret off and now her son would starve. I told her to talk to Warren's estate lawyer about child support. She said there was no estate, just debt. I said that wasn't my problem and tried to get in my car. She grabbed my arm. I yanked away and told her to never touch me again. She said this wasn't over. I believed her. That night I had dinner with Lisa to celebrate the deal with Margaret. We went to a little Italian place we used to love before Warren banned me from girls' nights. Halfway through dinner, Laura walked in with her daughter. They sat 2 tables away staring at me. I tried to ignore them, but my appetite was gone. Lisa asked if we should leave. I said no. I wouldn't be run out of every place in town. We finished our meal in tense silence. As we left, Laura said loudly that some people had no shame. Her daughter asked why that lady was so mean. I kept walking. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I knew Amanda and Laura were planning something. I just didn't know what. Then Carla called with bad news. The insurance company was dragging their feet on the payout. They wanted to complete their investigation first. She said this was normal but frustrating. I asked how long it might take. She said anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. I wanted to scream. I was burning through my savings on legal fees. At this rate, I'd be broke before I saw a penny of insurance money. That weekend, I decided to start packing Warren's things. I couldn't stand looking at them anymore. In his closet, I found a box hidden behind his shoes. Inside were love letters from Amanda going back 3 years. So much for working late on Wednesdays. There were also photos of him with both kids. He looked happy in a way he never did with me. I threw everything in a trash bag. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A life insurance policy for $500,000. The beneficiary was listed as To be determined. Was this what Amanda had been talking about? I called Carla immediately. She said to bring her everything. We met at her office that Sunday. She examined the policy and said it was never filed with any company. It was just a draft. Warren probably planned to get it after the divorce. I asked if the others knew about it. Carla said there was no way to tell, but if they did, it explained why they thought there was more money. We decided not to mention it to anyone. Let them think what they wanted. The real policy was for $100,000, and I was the rightful beneficiary. End of story. Monday morning started normally. I taught my classes and tried to focus on my students. During my free period, I checked my phone. There were dozens of missed calls from Carla. I called her back immediately. She sounded panicked. She said Amanda's lawyer had found something. Warren had opened a safety deposit box a month before he died. No one knew what was in it. The bank required a court order to open it. Amanda was pushing for an emergency hearing. My stomach dropped. What else had Warren hidden? Carla said not to panic. Whatever was in the box couldn't change the insurance beneficiary, but it could complicate things. We'd have to wait for the hearing. It was scheduled for next week. I spent the rest of the day distracted. My students noticed and asked if I was okay. I said I had a headache and soldiered through. That night I couldn't eat. I kept imagining what might be in that box. More policies? Evidence of other kids? Proof he was planning to leave me? The possibilities were endless. The next morning I woke up to find my car tires slashed. All 4 of them. I called the police and Officer Dana came out. She reviewed my camera footage, but the angle was wrong. We could see someone approach my car, but not their face. She said it was probably Amanda or Laura, but without proof there was nothing she could do. I had to call a tow truck and miss work. The repairs cost $800 I didn't have. I put it on a credit card and tried not to cry. That afternoon I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of me at the grocery store that morning. The message said, "We're watching." I forwarded it to Carla and Officer Dana. They both said to vary my routine and stay alert. Easier said than done in a small town. The rest of the week crawled by. I installed a doorbell camera and motion sensors. I started carrying my pepper spray in my hand whenever I went outside. I checked my mirrors constantly for anyone following me. The stress was eating me alive. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. I put on my best teacher dress and tried to look responsible. The courtroom was small and stuffy. Amanda was there with her lawyer. Laura was there too with a different lawyer. Even Margaret showed up, though she sat in the back and avoided eye contact. The judge was an older woman named Judge Nancy, who looked tired before we even started. Amanda's lawyer went first. He argued that the safety deposit box might contain Warren's true wishes for his estate. He said it was only fair to see what was inside before distributing any assets. My lawyer countered that fishing expeditions weren't valid legal arguments. The insurance policy was clear, and the beneficiary couldn't be changed posthumously. Judge Nancy asked if anyone knew what might be in the box. Amanda's lawyer said his client believed it contained important documents. When pressed for specifics, he admitted they were guessing. After some back and forth, Judge Nancy ordered the box opened with all parties present. We'd meet at the bank the next day. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I kept running scenarios in my head. What if Warren had written a will leaving everything to his kids? What if there was evidence of more children? What if he'd hidden cash? By morning, I was exhausted and nauseated. We met at the bank at 9 a.m. Judge Nancy was there with a court clerk. Amanda and Laura looked hopeful. I felt like I might faint. The bank manager led us to a private room. He produced the box and set it on the table. It was smaller than I'd expected. Judge Nancy opened it and started removing items. First was Warren's passport, then some old coins that looked valuable, then a manila envelope. She opened it and pulled out papers. As she read, her expression changed. She looked up at me with something like sympathy. She said the envelope contained adoption papers. Warren had been adopted as a baby. Margaret wasn't his biological mother. The room went silent. Margaret made a strangled sound and sank into a chair. The papers showed his birth name was different. His biological mother was listed as a teenager from 2 towns over. There was also a letter from Warren to himself, dated a week before he died. In it, he wrote about finding out he was adopted and not knowing how to tell Margaret. He was afraid she'd be devastated. He planned to tell her after the divorce when things were calmer. The letter ended with him saying he loved her despite the lies. Margaret was sobbing now. Her lawyer tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away. She looked at me and said Warren was her whole world. How could he not tell her? I actually felt bad for her. Amanda and Laura looked stunned. Their lawyers whispered frantically. Judge Nancy continued through the box. There were no insurance policies, no will, no mention of children or money, just the adoption papers and some family jewelry. She declared the hearing complete and said the insurance matter should proceed as originally determined. We filed out in silence. In the parking lot, Margaret approached me. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she waved him off. She said she was sorry for everything. She said finding out Warren lied to her too changed her perspective. She promised to honor our agreement and leave me alone. Then she left without another word. Amanda and Laura were arguing with their lawyers. I heard Amanda say this changed nothing. Laura said they needed a new strategy. I got in my car and drove away. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. That evening, Carla called. She said Margaret's lawyer confirmed she was dropping all involvement. Without her support and money, Amanda and Laura's cases were falling apart. The insurance company had also approved my claim. I'd have a check within 2 weeks. I cried with relief. It was really happening. I was going to be free. The next few days were blessedly quiet. No harassment, no surprise visits, no threatening notes. I started to believe it might actually be over. Then I got a certified letter. Laura was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress. She claimed I'd known about Warren's daughter for years and deliberately kept them apart. It was ridiculous, but I still had to respond. Carla said it was a last-ditch effort. Laura couldn't afford a real legal battle. She was hoping I'd settle to make her go away. I said absolutely not. I was done being pushed around. Carla filed our response denying all claims. She also filed a countersuit for harassment and defamation. 2 could play this game. Amanda must have gotten the same idea because I got another certified letter the next day. She was suing for the same thing with the same bogus claims. Carla added her to our countersuit. She said they were desperate and making mistakes. Their cases had no merit, but I still had to pay Carla to fight them. A week later, the insurance check arrived. $100,000. I stared at it for a long time. After Carla's fees and my debts, I'd have about $60,000 left. Not life-changing money, but enough to start over. I deposited it immediately. The next day, I listed the house for sale. I couldn't stay there with all the bad memories. Plus, I needed to pay off the mortgage Warren had hidden. The realtor said it would sell fast in this market. She was right. I got an offer within 3 days. That weekend, I started looking for apartments in the next town over. I found a nice 2-bedroom near a good school. The principal there was hiring and liked my experience. Things were finally looking up. Then Amanda showed up one last time. She caught me loading boxes into my car. She looked defeated. She said her lawyer dropped her case. She couldn't afford to continue. She asked one more time if I'd help with her son. I said I was sorry, but no. She called me heartless and walked away. I never saw her again. The house sale closed 2 weeks later. After paying off the mortgage and fees, I had $30,000 left. Combined with the insurance money, I had enough to start fresh. I moved into my new apartment and started my new job. The other teachers were welcoming. No one knew my history. It was perfect. A month later, Carla called with good news. Laura had dropped her suit. She couldn't afford to fight the countersuit. Both women had been ordered to pay my legal fees, though Carla doubted we'd ever see the money. I didn't care. It was over. That weekend, I joined a book club. I bought name brand cereal. I spent money without asking permission. I was free. 6 months later, I ran into Margaret at a restaurant 2 towns over. We both froze. Then she nodded and went back to her meal. We didn't speak, but it felt like closure. I heard through the grapevine that she'd started therapy to deal with the adoption revelation. Good for her. A year later, I was grading papers when I got a Facebook message. It was from Amanda. She apologized for everything. She said she'd been desperate and took it out on me. She said Aiden was doing well. Her mom was helping with childcare while she worked. She didn't ask for money. I wrote back that I accepted her apology and wished them well. Then I blocked her. Some bridges should stay burned. It's been 2 years now. I'm dating a nice guy named James who treats me like an equal. I have my own bank account and make my own decisions. I still teach and love it. Sometimes I think about Warren and wonder if he ever loved me or if I was just convenient. Then I remember it doesn't matter. He's gone and I'm free. The insurance money is mostly gone now, but it served its purpose. It bought me freedom from Warren's family and his lies. It bought me a fresh start. Margaret kept her word and never contacted me again. again. I hope she found peace with Warren's deception. As for Amanda and Laura, I don't know what happened to them. I hope they're doing well. Their kids didn't ask to be born into that mess, but their futures weren't my responsibility. Warren made his choices, and we all paid for them. The white lilies at his funeral should have been my first clue about the secrets he was keeping, but in the end, his lies set me free. The insurance money he tried to keep from me became my escape route. Sometimes karma works in mysterious ways. I kept one thing from that whole ordeal, the baseball bat. It sits in my bedroom closet, a reminder that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can protect myself, that I survived Warren and everything that came after. These days I sleep soundly. No more jumping at noises or checking locks obsessively. No more looking over my shoulder. No more fear, just peace and the knowledge that I earned my freedom. Warren controlled me for 3 years, but he couldn't control me from the grave. His insurance policy meant to provide for him became my salvation. I think he would have hated that, which makes it even sweeter. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. 17 missed calls from Carla. My stomach dropped as I called her back. She answered on the first ring and told me to sit down. She said Margaret's lawyer had called. Margaret had a stroke last night and was in the hospital. Before she lost consciousness, she kept saying my name and something about the trust. Her lawyer wanted to know if I'd release the funds early for her medical bills. I sat there stunned. After everything she'd put me through, part of me wanted to say no, but I wasn't that person. I told Carla to release half the funds immediately for her care. The other half would go to her when she recovered, as our agreement stated. Carla said I was being more generous than required. I said I just wanted this all to be over. I went to work trying to process everything. During lunch, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Margaret's lawyer. He thanked me for releasing the funds and said Margaret was stable but couldn't speak yet. He said she'd written something on a notepad for me. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I hung up and cried in my car. This whole mess had broken all of us in different ways. That afternoon, I was teaching when the principal knocked on my door. She said I had an urgent visitor in the office. My heart raced as I left my assistant in charge. In the office sat a woman I'd never seen before. She introduced herself as Nancy, Warren's biological sister. My legs felt weak. She said she'd been searching for him for years and only found out about his death through the adoption records becoming public during our court hearing. She wasn't here for money. She just wanted to know about her brother. I spent the next hour telling her about Warren, the good and the bad, how he could be charming but controlling, how he'd hidden so much from everyone. She listened without judgment. Then she told me about their birth mother, a teenager who'd given up 2 kids she couldn't care for. Nancy was adopted by a family in another state. She'd always wondered about her brother. Now she knew and wished she didn't. Before leaving, she said Warren was lucky to have me, even if he didn't deserve it. I didn't correct her. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about secrets and lies. Warren had built his whole life on them. Even Margaret, who thought she knew everything about her son, had been deceived. I made a decision. I called Carla and told her to release the rest of Margaret's trust funds immediately. I didn't want that money hanging over anyone's head anymore. Carla said I was sure giving up leverage, but I didn't care. I was done with leverage and manipulation. 2 days later, I got another surprise visitor at school. This time it was Laura's daughter, the 9-year-old. She was alone, which set off alarm bells. I brought her to the principal's office and called the police. Turns out she'd run away from home to find me. She said her mom was acting crazy and she was scared. Officer Dana handled it delicately. She called child services while I sat with the girl. She kept asking why her daddy had to die. I didn't have good answers. Laura showed up an hour later looking frantic. She screamed at me for kidnapping her daughter. Officer Dana explained the situation, but Laura wasn't listening. She said I'd turned her daughter against her. The child services worker arrived and separated them to talk. I gave my statement and left. The whole thing made me sick. That poor kid was caught in the middle of adult drama she didn't understand. The next day, Carla called with news. Laura had been arrested for filing a false police report about the kidnapping. During questioning, she admitted to being the one who threw the brick through my window and slashed my tires. She kept receipts for the brick and knife in her car. Sometimes criminals really are that stupid. Officer Dana called to confirm they were pressing charges. I felt relieved, but also sad. Laura's daughter would suffer most from this. A week passed without drama. I was starting to relax again when Amanda texted. She said she was sorry for everything and wanted to meet one last time to clear the air. I almost deleted it, but something made me agree. We met at a park during the day with lots of people around. She looked different, calmer. She said she'd started therapy and realized she'd been grieving Warren in unhealthy ways. She'd projected her anger onto me when really she was mad at him for lying. She said she'd gotten a job and was moving in with her parents for support. She didn't want anything from me except forgiveness. I told her I forgave her, but we could never be friends. She said she understood. Then she told me something that floored me. Warren had told her I was dying of cancer. That's why he was getting divorced. He said he couldn't watch me waste away. She believed him until the court hearings when she saw I was perfectly healthy. That's when she realized everything he told her was lies. We sat in silence processing that. Nah. Even from beyond the grave, Warren was revealing new deceptions. Before she left, Amanda said one more thing. She said Aiden would grow up knowing his father's name, but not his legacy. She'd tell him Warren died in an accident and leave it at that. Some truths weren't worth sharing. I agreed and we parted ways for good. That weekend, I was cleaning out the last of Warren's things when I found a hidden folder in his filing cabinet. Inside were printed emails between him and someone named Jackie. My blood ran cold as I read. Warren had been planning to fake his own death. He'd researched how to disappear and start over with a new identity. The emails were dated 2 weeks before his actual death. Jackie seemed to be some kind of consultant who helped people vanish. The last email was Warren saying he needed more time to get funds together. Then nothing. I sat on my bedroom floor surrounded by papers trying to process this. Had Warren's death really been an accident, or had he tried to execute his plan and something went wrong? I'd never know for sure. I thought about giving the emails to the police, but what was the point? Warren was dead either way. I burned the papers in my sink and washed the ashes down the drain. Some secrets should stay buried. The next month passed peacefully. My house sale finalized and I moved into my new apartment. I started my new teaching job and made friends with my coworkers. No one knew my history and I kept it that way. I was building a life free from Warren's shadow. Then I got a call that changed everything. It was from a lawyer in another state. He said he represented Warren's biological mother. She'd been following the news about the adoption revelation and wanted to meet me. She was dying and wanted to know about the son she gave up. I agreed to visit her the following weekend. She lived in a nursing home 3 hours away. When I walked into her room, I saw where Warren got his green eyes. She was frail but alert. She thanked me for coming and asked me to tell her everything. So I did. The good and bad, the lies and secrets, the other women and children. She listened without flinching. When I finished, she said Warren sounded just like his biological father, a charming man who couldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it. She'd given Warren up to save him from that legacy, but genetics won anyway. She asked if I hated her for giving him up. I said no. She'd done what she thought was best. She smiled sadly and said she'd spent 40 years wondering if she made the right choice. Now she knew it wouldn't have mattered. Some people were just born broken. Before I left, she pressed an envelope into my hand. She said it was for my troubles. I tried to refuse, but she insisted. I didn't open it until I got home. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note. It said, "For all the apologies I never got to make." I stared at that check for a long time. Blood money from another one of Warren's victims, but I was practical now. I deposited it and used it to pay off my debts and student loans. The rest went into savings. Warren had taken so much from me. I'd take what I could get from his family, biological or otherwise. 2 weeks later, I heard Margaret was out of the hospital and in rehab. Her lawyer sent a formal thank you for releasing the trust funds early. He said it saved her life. I felt good about that decision, even though Margaret had made my life hell for a while. We were all victims of Warren's lies in the end. Spring came, and with it a sense of renewal. I'd been at my new job for 6 months and loved it. My coworkers invited me out, and I actually went. I dated casually, but didn't get serious with anyone. I needed time to remember who I was without Warren. One day, I ran into my old neighbor from the house. She said Amanda had moved away, and Laura was doing community service for the vandalism. She also said Margaret had sold Warren's childhood home and moved to a senior community. Everyone was moving on. I thought that was the end of it. Then I got a Facebook message from Nancy, Warren's biological sister. She said she'd been doing genealogy research and found something interesting. Warren had another biological sibling, a brother who'd been adopted by a family in Canada. She wondered if I thought she should reach reach out. I told her that was her choice, but to be prepared for more disappointment. Warren's biological family seemed to share his talent for deception. She messaged back a week later. She'd found the brother. His name was Brian, and he was nothing like Warren. He was a social worker who ran a nonprofit for at-risk youth. He'd known he was adopted and had been searching for siblings for years. He was devastated to learn Warren had died, but grateful to connect with Nancy. Sometimes genetics didn't determine everything after all. The 1-year anniversary of Warren's death approached. I felt anxious as the date got closer. Would Amanda or Laura resurface? Would Margaret break her silence? But the day came and went without incident. I spent it doing normal things. Teaching, grading papers, watching Netflix. Warren didn't deserve space in my head anymore. Then something unexpected happened. I got a letter from Laura's daughter, now 10. It was written in careful cursive. She said she was sorry for all the trouble and hoped I was okay. She said her mom was getting help and they were doing better. She ended by saying she knew I wasn't a bad person like her mom had said. Her therapist had helped her understand adult problems weren't her fault. I cried reading that letter. That little girl had more emotional maturity than most of the adults in this story. I wrote back a short note saying I was glad she was doing well and that none of this was her fault. I said her dad would be proud of how strong she was. It wasn't entirely true, but she needed to hear it. I mailed it before I could change my mind. Summer arrived and I felt truly free for the first time. I took a vacation by myself to the beach. I read books and ate good food and didn't think about Warren once. When I got back, there was a package waiting. No return address. Inside was the baseball bat I'd left at the old house. There was a note that said, "You forgot this. Stay strong. M." Margaret's handwriting. I laughed despite myself. Even she had a sense of humor about it all now. I kept the bat in my new apartment, not for protection, but as a reminder. I'd survived Warren. I'd survived his family. I'd survived his lies and manipulations and secrets. I was stronger than I knew. The insurance money was long gone, spent on lawyers and moving and starting over, but it had served its purpose. It bought me freedom from a life I didn't choose. These days, I barely think about that time. Occasionally, something will trigger a memory. White lilies at the grocery store. A man who looks like Warren from behind. A news story about insurance fraud. But the memories don't hurt anymore. They're just part of my story. The part that led me to where I am now. Teaching at a school I love in a town where nobody knows my past. Dating when I feel like it. Making my own choices about money and time and relationships. Warren tried to control me even from beyond the grave. His mother tried to guilt me. His mistresses tried to manipulate me. But I won. Not because I got the money, though that helped. I won because I got my life back. I won because I learned to stand up for myself. I won because I discovered I was stronger than any of them expected. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Warren had lived. Would he have gone through with faking his death? Would more children have surfaced? Would Margaret have ever learned the truth about his adoption? I'll never know, and that's okay. Some questions don't need answers.